Hi, today I'm going to be talking about the growing industry adoption of adsorption technologies, particularly in extraction and post-processing. I expect that you might be part of the canna-curious crowd, most likely with a scientific background. A little bit about me. My name is Sheldon Lotspeich, and I come from a completely different world. A world of supply chain management and maritime logistics. Not in terribly technical background, but in the last several years that I've been supporting and working with the cannabis industry, specifically with extraction techs and manufacturers of cannabis oils, really gotten a unique exposure to the industry and a breadth of perspective on the general landscape and opportunities going forward. I feel really grateful for the opportunity to play a role in which I can watch science in action in processing and in this growing and brand new industry. There are many unique challenges facing manufacturers of cannabis extracts, notably contaminants that are present in the product, scaling activities that are underway to meet future and current demand have and will continue to face quality control challenges. It's important to constantly improve processing methodology to meet the need with the smallest impact to public health. The use of adsorbents in the cannabis industry are helping to overcome these barriers, facing wider adoption by improving the quality and consistency of product. So a little bit about the challenges are the fact that we are in a transformation into an industry. This comes with scale and commercialization of the product in order to meet just the tremendous demand and curiosity around interacting with cannabinoids. In this discussion, it's going to be extraction focused, mainly because when we talk about a commercial product, the general trends are moving towards edibles, vaporized products, or isolates taken in a tincture. And so all of these are going to be in oil form and thus extracted from the plant. So what contributes to this is that the plant has a tendency to accumulate contaminants. It's like a sponge. This is good for helping it to uptake nutrients during growth, but can also cause the ability for the plant to store pesticides and heavy metals in its oil producing sites and trichomes. There's a commercial impact on the prevalence of these undesirable compounds and it making its way to the end consumption product. And this is mainly what is trying to be mitigated through the adoption of adsorption. Some contaminants that can get into the end consumer product are unwanted colors or odors, heavy metals, pesticides. These are generally not desired by the end consumer, whether or not they know it. So as mentioned, in order to accomplish separating or removing these unwanted compounds, the industry has looked to start using adsorption as a solution. Adsorption, simple definition, as you may be familiar, the adhesion in an extremely thin layer of molecules, such as in liquids, to the surfaces of solid bodies or liquids which with they are in contact. A practical example of this would be like a Brita filter. Carbon filtration is an adsorption process in which the water is coming through and you're holding back unwanted elements which are known to be negative for your health. With cannabis oil extraction, the adsorption process is quite similar in the sense that you're going after known quantities which you don't want there to be there, and you're using a targeted process in order to pull that out. As we start to kind of dive deeper into the issue of what's facing extractors, it's important to start with the regulatory environment. At a federal level in the United States, marijuana, which is defined as the psychoactive dried resinous flower buds and leaves of the female hemp or cannabis plant, cannabis sativa or cannabis indica that contain high levels of THC and are smoked, vaped, ingested, especially for their intoxicating effect. So marijuana is a Schedule I drug according to the DEA, which is defined as a substance with no currently accepted medical use and a potential for abuse. Despite this potential for abuse and these concerns from regulatory agencies, many consumers have engaged with their state-approved programs and are trying cannabis, and there are many new entrants into experimenting with cannabinoids. So you have marijuana at the federal level and hemp. And hemp isn't some industry which has been around for a long time. It was really only made fully legal with the passage of the 2018 Farm Bill, which authorized the cultivation of industrial hemp, which is defined as the plant cannabis sativa L and any part of that plant, whether growing or not, with a delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol or delta-9 THC concentration of not more than 0.3% on a dry weight basis. With the federal level, you have marijuana and hemp, and then even in legal marijuana states, you have a continued complexity of state and city regulations. It's good for new markets that they can learn from previously legalized markets about lessons learned and also the approaches taken. But at the end of the day, municipalities are still figuring it out and kind of still learning what works. With rapid growth, which is caused by interest from the general public and demand for cannabinoids to be accessible, there is a need for R&D. More consumers are going to be more regulation, as a wider pool of people that are consuming cannabis are going to be less educated, and thus you need to have more stringent production requirements. In order to develop this, it needs time, tremendous amount of time in order to learn and experiment, and it's also a very capital intensive process. One of the elements that also complicates this is the various rules that actually provision for research and development and how a controlled substance is brought in and out of inventory in order to actually be able to do research, both from the cost and commercial elements and also the regulatory environment. There is a time pressure that exists in order to build a legal ecosystem and industry. This is mainly because of the fact that we are converting from a fully black market as of a decade ago to the future where it's legal and has full implementations and standards in place that make it so that consumers can purchase the products with clear knowledge and confidence in their quality and efficacy. Another element which challenges the legal growth side is taxes and the limited practical room for error. Not only is there startup costs, but then also while producing revenue, you have to be able to have room to make mistakes, try things out, and experiment, which is also going to add time and cost to this legalization effort. In many situations, I've heard and also referenced the industry much like being a river. People are going to find their way, as proven over the previous decades, to consuming cannabis. But if we want to bring this to a wider group of people, then it's going to require good regulation and information flows. Trying to just stop cannabis now is like throwing a rock into a rushing river. People are still going to find a way, so it's important that that's where that time pressure comes from in order to legalize and figure things out in a meaningful manner. Historically, manufacturers have been hindered from success by a lot of these challenges. THC production has a difficult and lengthy road to getting licensed, set up, and operating. And with industrial hemp grown for CBD, with no FDA approval for any end products other than Epidiolex and anti-seizure medicine, CBD has no nutritional or approved medicinal application, and so that has put strains on the downstream market to actually get the product to consumers. There really is no alternative to supporting current industry participants. But one of the ways that we can help bring those participants to a higher level is the sharing of experience and lessons learned. There's costs and barriers to entry, and so if we have higher churn of participants and processors, then that means that there will be slower advancement for the general industry in production. Resources put towards entering and crossing those barriers of entry, as mentioned previously, expensive licensing, equipment, those resources get put into startup costs instead of going towards research and development and helping to push the current product and options forward and advancement. We're really also have to be able to address scale, and that's where working with the current participants market participants is so important, so that there's markets all over the country, and we want to make sure that they can be served with people who are in the local market, understand their challenges. With state level legalization, this kind of creates the borders where people are operating inside their own environment. But it's also important for the industry to kind of experiment with different directions. So with addressing scale, adsorption helps scale in the form that it's a consistent and it's inorganic chemistry, and so it's a consistent process in which you're going after targeted compounds and you're able to remove that repeatedly, which is going to help with standardization and creating of quality, consistent product. Some of the ways that adsorption processes are used in line with every run, like a regular process, would be depth filtration, such as lenticular filtration, meant for high flow adsorption activity. And then there's also using functionalized minerals for color and heavy metals, or it can also be done as a batch process for targeted contaminants, using compounds such as magnesium silicate for pesticides or targeting color. Capability really does support regulation. More broad adoption of adsorptive practices is actually a really good thing for the industry. By establishing industry norms and standards set by general consensus of capability, it's going to be easier to regulate the industry or have regulations that are informed by the current capabilities of what manufacturers can consistently produce. Ultimately, a further advancement of industry extraction technology is going to lead to quality end product. Quality end product would be substantially free of contaminants, which would be a benefit to consumers and also in line with the objective of regulators. We're at the dawn of a new industry, and it cannot be understated enough. As of January 2020, roughly 244,000 full-time jobs are supported by the legal cannabis industry. Taking place all over the country at the same time, how do you create an environment where consumers are confident in what they're buying and the efficacy of what they're ingesting into their bodies? Imagine this. A farmer or somebody with some land really wants to experiment with cannabis. So they look into it, they plant some seeds, they want to grow industrial hemp on their property. Once you've produced an end product, what do you do with it? If they could find easily a local extractor who could process their flower product into consumer packaged goods and oil derivatives from that growth in a compliant manner and get those products back to the grower so that they can sell that to their local community and have engagement that's product which is tailored to their local environment, an engagement of entrepreneurism, and also the opportunity for community development through self-starter and interactions of producing a good and creating value for those who want to consume it. This new channel for entrepreneurism is really exciting, and it would really be unlocked by having a mature industry that can support it. It's very important that there's many participants in the manufacturing landscape so that technology isn't siloed. There's so many opportunities for the functional uses of biomass from cannabis industry, from green chemical stock to fibers, seeds, proteins, even organic stock for new material sciences. And it can't be said enough either that there's an opportunity for significant environmental impact, CO2 sequestration, land and water heavy metal remediation, and also there's an opportunity for potential radiological remediation utilizing cannabis. There's still many challenges that need to be overcome for the industry. In some ways, challenges pop up that are unexpected, such as THC can even be a contaminant. It may be interesting as why wouldn't you want to have THC in your CBD, but there are many consumers that are regulated, such as teachers, those in the transportation industry, military personnel, who want to consume CBD for its benefits, but they don't want to fail a drug test for having THC show up. This is further exacerbated by the legal definition, meaning that the plant can have less than 0.3% THC, but as you concentrate that down, you can end up with much higher levels of THC in your CBD oil. This concentration issue makes it so that technologies are needed in order to be able to separate those out. Today, extractors and manufacturers regularly use reverse phase chromatography or other methods in order to separate CBD and THC, which can be very difficult to distill apart from each other. There's still a growing use of adsorption processes, and it's a good thing for the advancement of the industry. But testing new adsorbents can be exceedingly expensive and also very time consuming. The process of trial and error isn't something that can be done endlessly, and there is a risk to the oil, which is also highly valuable and often controlled. For example, there's thousands of different types of silica gel. So figuring out what the industry needs and finding that balance specifically between cost and the specification of those goods is always going to be a dynamic challenge. And really this challenge comes from a mixture of economics and science. An example of a scenario recently, a company that we were working with had a very dialed in blend and process in order to consistently remove all of the target compounds that they didn't want to have prevalent in their oil. As soon as they took that blend to another market, it didn't have the same effect that they were looking for. This could be caused by different constituents in the oil that they're treating, environmental factors in their processing facilities, but nonetheless, this is still something which we're learning and just barely getting into and widespread use. Another element which is also challenging the advancement of the industry is the information environment. There's intra-industry competition, misinformation, and siloing of information in order to create value. Despite these things, I ultimately think that the cannabis industry has a strong culture of innovation and collaboration, and it is one of the best ways forward. Ultimately, looking forward, the challenges of the cannabis industry are almost impossible to know definitively. The capabilities of the plant are so vast that it's going to take time to explore those capabilities, and the challenges are also going to change over time. An effective way to combat some of these challenges is through crowdsourcing of R&D so that the cost and time isn't concentrated in order to advance technology. And also wider adoption of adsorptive technologies can help support standardization and push the envelope for what we can do as an industry. It's absolutely critical that the cannabis industry continues to support the demand that's there so that less scrupulous routes aren't found and we consistently move towards a quality end product that people can count on. There are many challenges ahead, But I'm excited, and I invite you to join in overcoming these challenges with the cannabis industry and bringing in your field of study and being a participant. Thanks for your time.